The courtroom was filled with murmurs, whispers, and the smug laughter of people who once called themselves my family. I stood there quietly, my old, worn-out boots scraping against the cold floor. My father sat on the front bench, his arm around my mother, both dressed in expensive clothes that glimmered under the fluorescent lights. My siblings, too, sat behind them, whispering and snickering, throwing looks of pity and disgust in my direction. They looked at me as if I was some beggar who had lost her way into their world. When the judge entered, everyone rose, and the silence fell like a heavy curtain. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face steady. It wasn't the first time my family had tried to humiliate me, but this time, it was different. This was court, not their living room. I had been dragged here by them, accused of trying to steal property that apparently didn't belong to me. The same property that I had poured my blood, sweat, and years into maintaining. My father's lawyer started with his opening statement, painting me as a manipulative, ungrateful daughter who had taken advantage of her parents' kindness. Every word hit like a slap, but I stayed quiet. They wanted me to explode, to break down, to show weakness. But I just stood there, holding my folder tight against my chest. Then my mother leaned toward my sister and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Look at her, coming to court in those filthy boots. She should be ashamed." Laughter rippled through their row. Even the lawyer cracked a small smile. I looked down at my boots, scuffed and torn from years of working on the land, our land. Those boots had seen the sun rise over our family farm, carried me through storms and mud while everyone else stayed comfortable inside the mansion. But to them, they were just trash and boots. The judge turned his gaze toward me. "Miss Khan, do you have anything to say in your defense?" I took a slow breath and nodded. My voice was calm when I spoke. "Yes, Your Honor. I have one document that might clear things up." The courtroom went still. I opened my folder and pulled out a single folded paper. My father's smirk vanished for a moment, then returned, forced and nervous. I stepped forward, handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. The silence that followed was the longest 30 seconds of my life. My mother's jewelry clinked as she shifted uncomfortably. My father tried to catch the judge's eye, but the man didn't look up until he had read every line. Then he set the paper down slowly, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Khan," the judge said finally, his voice firm, "did you sign this document?" My father's eyes darted toward me, then toward the paper. That's an old draft. It's not valid." The judge raised an eyebrow. "It's notarized and legally binding. This deed shows that your daughter, the defendant, is the rightful owner of the property in question. It was transferred to her name 5 years ago. The signatures and seals are verified. Are you denying your own handwriting?" My father stammered, It was a mistake. She must have." The judge slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough. You brought this case to waste the court's time, trying to defame your own daughter. Bailiff, lock the doors. I want no one leaving until I finish reading my decision." Gasps filled the room. My mother's face went pale, and my siblings stared at me as if I'd just turned into someone else. The same people who called me trash moments ago were now frozen in disbelief. The lawyer fumbled with his papers, realizing the case had just crumbled. The judge read aloud the statement from the document, detailing how the land had been transferred to me when my father fell ill years ago. I had taken care of him, paid off debts, managed the farm, and restored its value. Out of gratitude, he had signed the transfer himself. Later, when he recovered, greed must have taken over, and he decided to take it all back, erasing the fact that I was the one who kept everything afloat. As the judge continued, I looked at my family, not with hatred, but with a kind of sad understanding. They had always been obsessed with appearances, with money, with pride. They mocked my boots, my simplicity, my independence, but they never saw the strength behind them. When the judge finally declared me the legal and rightful owner, a rush of relief filled my chest. My knees almost buckled, but I stayed tall. My father's head dropped, and my mother covered her face. My sister started to cry quietly, realizing that their empire of arrogance had just collapsed in front of everyone. The judge looked at me once more. "Miss Khan, you may go. You have nothing to prove to anyone here." Then he turned to my family. "And as for you, be grateful she still carries your name with dignity." I picked up my folder, turned, and walked out of the courtroom. The sound of my boots echoed through the hall, steady, strong, unapologetic. Each step reminded me that I didn't need their approval anymore. Those same boots they laughed at had walked me through hell and brought me to justice. The moment the judge said, "Lock the doors," the entire courtroom went silent. My father's smirk faded instantly, my mother froze in disbelief, and my siblings exchanged panicked looks. The air felt heavy, thick with fear and realization that their game was over. For years, they had painted me as the outcast, the failure, the one who didn't belong in the family. But now, they were trapped in a room where truth could no longer be twisted. The judge's voice was calm but carried authority that made everyone straighten in their seats. "No one leaves this courtroom until I finish my statement," he said, glaring at my father. "This court does not tolerate fraud, manipulation, or perjury." My father tried to say something, but the judge lifted a hand, silencing him instantly. I stood quietly, hands clasped together, the single paper I had shown still lying on the judge's desk. It wasn't just a property deed, it was evidence of years of deceit. It contained not only the transfer of land but also a confession clause my father had signed when he was in the hospital. It stated that I had paid the family's debts, managed the estate, and saved them from bankruptcy. It proved that everything they now claimed as theirs had been restored through my hard work and sacrifice. My mother whispered under her breath, "This can't be real," but the judge heard her. "It's very real, ma'am," he said. "Your daughter did what none of you had the courage to do, she kept your legacy alive. And instead of gratitude, you brought her here to destroy her name." I watched my family crumble without saying a word. For years, they had called me weak, laughed at my simplicity, and mocked my humble life. I wasn't like them, I didn't chase status or money. All I ever wanted was respect and fairness. Yet here they were, exposed, embarrassed in front of strangers and the court. My brother, who had always been arrogant and loud, now sat with his head down, unable to look at me. My sister's mascara had begun to run down her cheeks, her perfect image cracking just like their lies. The judge continued, his tone now sharper. "You accused your daughter of theft, forged statements, and fabricated evidence. But the document she produced proves the opposite. I will be ordering a full investigation into your conduct, and if we find you tampered with any official records, you will face serious legal consequences." The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, reporters scribbling notes, people turning to look at my family with judgment in their eyes. My father's reputation had always been spotless. He was known as a respected businessman, a man of power and charm. But here, stripped of his influence, he looked small, cornered, and terrified. I could almost see the memories flashing through his mind. The day I helped him when his company went bankrupt, the nights I stayed up managing his paperwork, the morning he signed that deed over to me while thanking me with tears in his eyes. That gratitude had turned into greed when money started flowing again. He couldn't stand the idea of his daughter holding more power than him. The judge leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Khan, I've seen many cases of family disputes, but rarely one where the victim shows this much restraint. Your daughter has not pressed any criminal charges. Frankly, if she did, this entire courtroom would look different right now." My father's eyes met mine for the first time since the trial began. There was no pride left, no arrogance, just shame. My mother reached for his hand, but he pulled it away. My sister began to sob quietly. It was a strange moment, one where I felt both justice and heartbreak at once. These were the people I grew up with, the same ones I once defended to everyone, and now they were exposed for who they truly were. The judge turned to me again. "Miss Khan, you have the court's full protection. The property, assets, and inheritance in question legally belong to you. You are free to take possession immediately." I nodded slowly, holding back tears. "Thank you, Your Honor," I said softly. He smiled faintly. "You've shown remarkable dignity. Don't let anyone make you feel small again." The bailiff opened the doors after the verdict was announced, but no one moved. My family sat frozen, as though the floor had vanished beneath them. The same people who mocked me for wearing old boots and living a modest life were now facing a future without the luxury they took for granted. As I turned to leave, my mother whispered, "Please, don't do this to us." Her voice trembled with desperation. I stopped and looked at her, the woman who had once told me I was an embarrassment. "You did this to yourself," I said quietly. "All I ever wanted was respect. You could have had that instead of this." When I walked out of the courtroom, flashes from cameras filled the hallway. Reporters shouted questions, but I ignored them. Each step I took echoed with freedom and strength. My boots, the same ones they mocked, hit the marble floor with confidence. They were worn, yes, but they carried me through every storm my family had thrown at me. Outside, the cold air brushed against my face. I looked up at the sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Behind me, the courtroom doors closed, and with them, I closed a chapter of my life that had been filled with pain, betrayal, and humiliation. For the first time, I realized that justice isn't always about revenge. It's about truth, dignity, and the quiet strength to stand alone when everyone else walks away. My family had lost everything that day, not just property or money, but their masks, their power, and their pride.